All right, listener. So today, we're going to be looking at the case of Theresa.
Oh, yeah.
You sent over a lot of stuff for this one court. Documents, interviews, books, like whatever Mother says. And
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day, yeah.
Yeah,
Clearly you want to go deep on this one.
we do.
Particularly the murders of her daughters, Susan and Sheila.
Yeah, it's a case that really gets under your skin.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to try to figure out in this deep dive is the why behind it all.
Yeah.
What could drive a mother to do this to her own children?
Exactly. And honestly, just reading through these initial sources, I'm already feeling a knot in my stomach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about Theresa putting on this normal front while unspeakable things were happening.
Right.
I almost don't want to believe someone could be that manipulative.
It's unsettling for sure.
Yeah.
But that disconnect, that ability to compartmentalize is something we see in many perpetrators of domestic abuse.
Right.
It often starts small, almost unnoticeable,
Right.
before escalating to horrific levels.
Okay, so let's rewind to Theresa's early life.
Okay.
Her first marriage to Clifford Sanders ended. Well, not just in divorce, but in his death.
Right, and that's where things start to get murky.
Yeah.
We see controlling behaviors,
Uh-huh.
accusations of infidelity, and then boom,
Yeah.
Clifford is shot.
Yeah.
Teresa claims self-defense, but...
But even Clifford's sister had doubts.
Right.
And the way you've highlighted certain passages in these court documents,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder if the jury was swayed by the societal expectations of a grieving widow overlooking some glaring red flags.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
Remember, this was a different time.
Right.
And unfortunately, those implicit biases could creep into the justice system.
Right.
Even the district attorney in your source material expressed doubts.
Oh, wow.
Yet Teresa was acquitted.
And get this, after she's acquitted,
Yeah.
Theresa actually asks for the murder weapon back.
I know.
Who does that?
Wild.
It sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
It's a detail that speaks volumes, wouldn't you say?
Totally.
It's not remorse.
Yeah.
It's almost possessive.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a trophy.
Right.
It really foreshadows the darkness that's to come.
Okay, so fast forward, Theresa marries again,
Okay.
and again, and again,
Yeah.
4 more times, in fact.
Yeah.
And with each marriage,
Yeah.
the abuse towards her children intensifies,
Right.
especially for Susan and Sheila. I
Right.
mean, reading about the punishments, beatings, ice baths, even handcuffing them.
It's awful. It's just sickening.
This is where we see that classic escalation, that gradual tightening of control.
Right.
The abuse becomes a tool, a way to dominate and instill fear.
Right.
It's a pattern that repeats itself tragically often.
And then there's Cadet Harris, husband number 5.
Okay.
He actually forms a close bond with Susan,
Oh.
which sends Teresa into a jealous rage.
Oh, wow.
I can almost picture her
Yeah.
seething with this toxic mix of possessiveness and paranoia.
Jealousy in cases like this is rarely about love.
Right.
It's about control. Right.
About needing to be the center of attention.
Yeah.
In Teresa's mind, Susan became a threat,
Right.
a rival for Cadet's affection.
Yeah.
It's a twisted dynamic that ultimately set the stage for tragedy.
So it starts with Theresa forcing Susan into sex work and taking all her earnings.
Yeah.
I mean, how low can you go?
It's exploitation,
Yeah.
pure and simple.
Yeah.
Teresa saw Susan not as a daughter, but as a commodity,
Right.
a means to an end.
Yeah.
And what's even more disturbing is that Susan tried to escape, even ran away, but was always brought back.
Whoa, you're telling me authorities knew what was going on and still sent Susan back?
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
Here again, we see potential systemic failures.
Yeah.
Was it a lack of resources, disbelief of Susan's claims,
Right.
or societal norms that downplayed the severity of domestic abuse?
Right.
It's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for a more critical examination of how these systems were, and perhaps still are, failing vulnerable children.
It makes you sick to your stomach. And then one day, in a fit of rage, Theresa shoots Susan, leaving a bullet lodged in her back.
Oh my God.
Can't even imagine the pain, the fear.
This act of violence marks a chilling turning point.
Yeah.
It's not just punishment anymore.
Right.
It's a brutal, life-altering attack.
Yeah.
It shows just how dangerous Teresa had become, how far she was willing to go.
But it gets worse.
Oh no.
Theresa didn't take Susan to the hospital.
Oh good.
Instead, she forced Susan's brother Robert to operate on her at home.
What?
To dig the bullet out.
At home?
Yeah.
Think about that for a moment.
Oh my God.
The physical pain, the psychological trauma,
I know.
and Robert forced to participate in this horrific act.
Right.
likely under immense duress.
Yeah,
It's a prime example of the twisted loyalty that can arise in abusive families.
that's such a good point.
Was he a victim himself, or was there an element of complicity?
That's such a good
It's
point.
one of those unsettling nuances that makes this case so fascinating and
Oh.
so heartbreaking. It's not just about Theresa's monstrous acts, but also the ripple effects,
Right.
the trauma inflicted on everyone in her orbit.
So Susan's health deteriorates after this botched surgery.
Oh my God.
And Theresa panics.
Right.
She knows the evidence of her abuse will be discovered.
Yeah.
And that's when she decides to dispose of Susan.
Oh.
Literally like garbage.
It's a chilling illustration of how a perpetrator's mind works.
Yeah.
It's not grief, not remorse.
Right.
It's self-preservation at all costs.
Right.
And tragically, Susan becomes just another obstacle to be removed.
Theresa, with the help of her sons, William and Robert, drives Susan's weakened body out to Squaw Creek and sets her on fire.
Oh my God.
They leave her remains with some of her belongings, a Jules Verne novel, baby diapers.
I know.
It's a detail that always gets to me.
It's so sad.
Why those items?
It's deliberate, calculated.
Yeah.
The baby diapers, especially, were likely meant to mislead investigators.
Right.
Remember, they found Susan's remains almost a year later.
Right.
And initially, they thought she might be a young mother.
Oh, wow.
It was a cruel tactic, further dehumanizing Susan even in death.
It makes you wonder about the level of premeditation, right?
Right.
Did Theresa plan this all along, or was it a spur-of-the-moment act of desperation?
That's a question we'll keep circling back to.
Yeah.
Especially as we examine the psychological components of this case.
Right.
Was this a calculated act of evil, or was there a break, a descent into madness?
Okay, so Susan's gone, her identity unknown for months.
Right.
And now, tragically, Sheila becomes the focus of Theresa's escalating abuse.
Oh, my God.
It's almost as if with Susan out of the picture, Theresa needed a new target for her rage.
And it raises the question.
Yeah.
Was Sheila's fate already sealed? Was she living on borrowed time the moment Susan was gone?
God, that's horrifying.
It's a chilling thought, and sadly one that's all too common in cases of cyclical abuse.
Right.
Often one victim's escape or demise only intensifies the abuser's focus on the remaining ones.
And poor Terry, the youngest daughter. She witnesses it all,
I know.
tries to help, but she's just a kid herself,
Right.
trapped in this nightmare.
Carrie's experience adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
She's not just a bystander.
Right.
She's a victim too, carrying the weight of those memories and the guilt of not being able to save her sisters.
Right.
Her perspective, as you delve deeper into those interviews and books, will be crucial to understanding the full scope of this family's trauma.
Right. And it looks like those sources go into detail about Sheila's ordeal. The
Yeah.
beatings, the forced feedings,
Yeah.
even being locked in a linen closet for days.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even process
Yeah.
that level of cruelty?
It's a level of depravity that's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
It's not just physical abuse,
Right.
it's psychological torture.
Right.
And the fact that it escalated after Susan's death suggests a pattern,
Yeah.
a deepening of Theresa's pathology.
So as I'm reading this, I keep circling back to the question.
Yeah.
Was Theresa truly mentally ill,
Right.
or was she just a master manipulator?
Right.
Because the thing she did, the level of control,
Right.
it seems almost too calculated, too cold-blooded to be simply explained by a bad temper.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one we'll need to keep in mind as we move forward.
Right.
We'll look at the psychological evaluations, the expert opinions.
Right.
But ultimately, it's up to you, listener, to draw your own conclusions based on the evidence presented in these sources.
And there's still so much to unpack.
I know.
I'm already feeling overwhelmed. We're just scratching the surface.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
We'll navigate this together.
Okay.
Remember, the goal isn't just to recount the horrors, but to understand them.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the darkest corners, we find the most profound insights into the human condition.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Except the pieces are these horrific acts, and the bigger picture is something truly disturbing.
Yeah.
But keep going. You're on the right track.
Okay.
Look at what happens next with Sheila.
Okay, so it's like Susan's death almost gives Theresa permission to ramp up the abuse towards Sheila.
Right.
It's as if she's replacing one victim with another, and the intensity is just unbearable to read about.
It's that cyclical pattern we talked about,
Yeah.
sadly playing out in real time.
Right?
And remember, Sheila is now living with the knowledge of what happened to Susan,
Right.
adding another layer of terror to her daily existence.
Yeah.
She's essentially trapped, both physically and psychologically.
And then there's this incident where Sheila, in a desperate attempt to fight back, kicks Theresa during an argument.
Oh, wow.
It seems almost insignificant compared to the abuse she's been enduring.
Yeah.
But for Theresa, it was a breaking point.
It wasn't just a kick.
Right.
It was a challenge to Theresa's authority.
Right.
A crack in her carefully constructed facade of control.
Yeah.
And she couldn't let that stand.
Right.
Her reaction was swift and brutal.
She orders William and Robert to lock Sheila in the linen closet.
Oh, my God.
That tiny, cramped space. I can't even imagine the feeling of being trapped in there.
Knowing what's coming.
Isolation was a key part of Theresa's control strategy.
Right.
It not only physically confines the victim, but it also cuts them off from any potential support, making them entirely dependent on the abuser.
And Terry, she tries to help.
Yeah.
She sneaks Sheila some water, but then Theresa comes home.
No.
And Terry has to shove Sheila back into the closet to avoid punishment herself.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is.
Terry is forced to become complicit in her sister's suffering.
Yeah.
Not out of malice, but out of sheer survival instinct.
Right.
It highlights the insidious nature of abuse, how it poisons even the most basic bonds of family.
It's like everyone is a victim in this twisted game Theresa's playing.
Yeah.
And then the source material says Sheila is left in that closet for days.
Oh, my days.
But that's awful.
Hallucinating, crying out, and then silence. Just chilling.
That silence speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It marks the end of Sheila's torment.
Right.
But it also ushers in a new level of horror.
Right.
What follows is not a display of grief or remorse, but a calculated plan to dispose of the evidence.
Theresa waits 3 days until the smell of decomposition becomes unbearable before calling on William and Robert to help her dispose of Sheila's body.
Wow.
They put her in a cardboard box and drive towards Squaw Creek.
Notice the pattern here.
Yeah.
The chilling familiarity.
Right.
Just like with Susan and Len, Theresa chooses to dispose of the body herself, involving her sons in this horrific act.
Yeah.
It reinforces that sense of control,
Right.
of dictating the narrative even in death.
But this time they miss the turnoff and keep driving.
Oh, wow.
They eventually stop near Truckee, but then they almost get caught by a police officer while digging a grave.
Oh, my God.
Talk about a near miss.
It's a stark reminder of the role chance plays in these events.
Yeah.
Had that officer been a bit more observant,
Right.
had they chosen a different spot, the entire case could have unfolded differently.
Right.
But fate, or perhaps just bad luck, intervened, allowing Theresa to evade capture for a little while longer.
It's almost unbelievable.
I know.
They find another spot, bury Sheila near a campground, and her body is discovered the very next day.
Wow.
But because the crime scenes are so different, investigators don't connect it to Susan's murder.
It's tragic, isn't it?
It is.
Sheila is misidentified as a potential victim of a serial killer operating in the area.
Oh my God.
They even have the same medical examiner for both bodies.
What?
But he doesn't make the connection.
That's mind-boggling.
I know.
You'd think there would be some kind of system in place to cross-reference cases like this.
It highlights the limitations of law enforcement at the time.
Right.
The lack of centralized databases or sophisticated forensic techniques.
Right.
It also speaks to the potential for tunnel vision,
Yeah.
for investigators getting so focused on one theory that they overlook crucial connections.
So both Susan and Sheila remain unidentified. Their case is cold.
Right.
Meanwhile, Theresa is free to continue her reign of terror.
Oh, my God.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
And for years, she does just that. She moves to Salt Lake City, reinvents herself as Mrs. Cross,
Right.
a seemingly kind and caring live-in caregiver for an elderly woman.
Wait, so she goes from burning her daughter's bodies to caring for an elderly woman.
Yeah.
It's almost too much to wrap my head around.
It speaks to the complexities of the human psyche, doesn't it?
It really does.
The capacity for both immense cruelty and seemingly genuine compassion.
Yeah.
But remember, even in this new life, Theresa is still driven by a need for control,
Right.
for manipulating those around her.
It's like she's constantly playing a role,
Yeah.
putting on a performance.
Right.
But what about her surviving children?
Right.
They live through this nightmare,
Yeah.
carry the scars of their trauma. What happened to them?
Their stories are a testament to the enduring impact of abuse,
Right.
of how those wounds can shape a person's entire life.
Yeah.
They struggle with addiction, PTSD, run-ins with the law.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder that the damage inflicted within those walls doesn't simply vanish when the abuser is gone.
But Terry, She never gives up hope that the truth will come out.
Right.
For years, she tries to get people to believe her, but no one takes her seriously.
It's a tragic reality for many survivors of abuse.
Yeah.
Their voices are often silenced, their stories dismissed.
Right.
It speaks to the power imbalances that exist within families and within society as a whole.
But finally, in 1993, Terry sees an episode of America's Most Wanted and decides to call their tip line.
Oh, wow.
It's like a last-ditch effort.
Yeah.
A desperate plea for someone, anyone, to hear her story.
And it proves to be a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
It's a reminder of the power of media,
Right.
of public awareness,
Right.
in bringing these hidden horrors to light.
Yeah.
While the show couldn't directly help, they encouraged Terry to contact the authorities in Placer County.
And that's where she connects with Sergeant John Fitzgerald.
Okay.
He's the first person who actually believes her.
Sergeant Fitzgerald's role in this case cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
He listens to Terry, takes her seriously, and recognizes the potential validity of her claims.
Right.
It's a powerful example of how one person's empathy and dedication can make all the difference in seeking justice.
And then when Terry mentions the antique wedding ring Susan was wearing when she was killed, something clicks for Sergeant Fitzgerald.
Right.
He remembers the Jane Doe case from Squaw Creek.
Wow.
It's like a light bulb goes off.
It's a testament to his investigative skills.
Yeah.
His attention to detail.
Right.
That one seemingly insignificant piece of information becomes the crucial link.
Yeah.
Connecting the dots between two seemingly unrelated cases.
He knows he has to find Theresa.
Right.
It takes some digging. But eventually he tracks her down in Salt Lake City.
Wow.
Still living as Mrs. Cross.
Oh my God.
When he shows up at her doorstep, she tries to play it cool.
Yeah.
But eventually admits who she is.
Wow.
And get this, when they go to arrest her,
Yeah.
she tries to escape through the back door.
Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, Theresa's instinct is to run, to evade responsibility.
Right.
It speaks to her deep-seated fear of consequences,
Yeah.
of facing the reality of her actions.
But thankfully, they catch her.
Good.
And back in Sacramento, investigators search Theresa's old apartment and find that tiny linen closet where Sheila had been imprisoned.
Wow.
They even find traces of human blood.
Oh my God.
It's all starting to come together.
Yeah.
They arrest William at his workplace and also charge Robert, who's already in prison, for another crime.
The pieces of the puzzle are finally falling into place.
Yeah.
The physical evidence corroborates Terry's account,
Right.
providing tangible proof of the horrors that occurred within those walls.
Right.
And with the arrest of Theresa and her sons, the long road to justice for Susan and Sheila finally begins.
The news of Theresa's arrest sends shockwaves through Salt Lake City.
I bet.
The people who knew her as Mrs. Cross are stunned, disbelieving.
Right.
It's like they're talking about two completely different people.
It reinforces the idea that evil often hides in plain sight, that appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions about who we can trust,
Right.
about the people we think we know.
And as the case moves toward trial, the big question becomes,
Yeah.
was Theresa mentally ill,
Right.
or was she just a master manipulator?
Right.
They bring in 3 mental health professionals to examine her.
Okay.
2 believe she's faking it,
Right.
while the 3rd thinks she might have multiple personality disorder.
This discrepancy highlights the complexities of mental health evaluations.
Yeah.
Especially in the context of criminal proceedings.
Right.
It raises questions about the role of mental illness in determining culpability,
Right.
about the line between accountability and compassion.
It's a thorny issue for sure.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the judge rules that Theresa is competent to stand trial.
Hi.
He argues that anyone who could put on such a convincing act of mental illness is clearly capable of understanding the charges against her and working with her lawyer.
It's a legal decision
Right.
based on specific criteria,
Mm-hmm.
and it sets the stage for a trial that will delve into the darkest recesses of human behavior.
And then when Theresa finds out that Robert is going to testify against her, she decides to change her plea to guilty.
Oh, wow.
It's a calculated move,
Yeah.
a recognition that the evidence against her is overwhelming.
Right.
It's also a strategic attempt to avoid the death penalty. Can you believe her ex-husband, Robert Sr., actually shouts "no" in the courtroom when he hears the plea?
Wow.
He's furious that she might avoid the ultimate punishment.
His outburst is raw, visceral.
Yeah.
It's the cry of a father who has lost 2 daughters,
Yeah.
who wants nothing more than to see their killer suffer the same fate.
Right.
His pain, His anger is palpable.
It's a reminder of the ripple effects of these crimes,
Yeah.
of the devastation that extends far beyond the immediate victims.
Right.
And then at the sentencing hearing, Robert Jr.'s victim impact statement is read aloud.
Okay.
It's incredibly powerful.
I bet.
He talks about how Theresa tortured her victims physically and mentally over the course of years, and how her surviving children were all sentenced to life without parole, living with the memories of their trauma.
His words are a poignant reminder of the invisible scars.
Right.
The lifelong sentences carried by those who have endured abuse.
Yeah.
It's a testament to their resilience,
Yeah.
their strength in the face of unimaginable suffering.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Teresa's lawyer tries to paint a picture of a woman who never had a fair chance,
Yeah.
who was just a child herself when she started having children.
Right.
But the prosecutor isn't buying it.
Right.
He calls her crimes unspeakable,
Yeah.
arguing that she has burdened her surviving children with so much emotional baggage, they're never going to come out of this hole.
It's a clash of perspectives.
Right.
A debate about the nature of evil.
Yeah.
About the balance between accountability and the possibility of redemption.
Right.
And it's a question that lingers long after the gavel falls,
Right.
prompting us to consider the complexities of the human heart, the darkness that can reside within seemingly ordinary individuals.
And in the end, the judge sentences Theresa to 2 consecutive life sentences.
Wow.
He calls her actions callousness beyond belief.
It's a sentence that reflects the gravity of her crimes,
Right.
the need to protect society from further harm.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, and perhaps can't fully address, the profound damage inflicted,
Right.
the lives shattered,
Yeah.
the enduring legacy of pain.
And then there's this strange twist.
Okay.
The elderly woman Theresa was caring for.
Yeah.
She's completely shocked when she finds out about the murders.
Oh, wow.
She thought Theresa was this kind and loving person.
Right.
She even finds a bunch of Christmas presents Theresa had bought for people.
It's a jarring juxtaposition, isn't it?
It is.
The woman capable of such monstrous acts,
Yeah.
also capable of seemingly genuine act of kindness.
Right.
It challenges our understanding of human nature,
Yeah.
of the duality that could exist within a single soul.
It's almost like she was trying to make amends, to atone for her past sins,
Right.
but in this completely misguided and ultimately futile way.
It adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate case.
Yeah.
And as we move towards the conclusion of this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think it's important to keep this duality in mind,
Right.
to grapple with the uncomfortable truths it reveals about the human capacity for both good and evil.
It's almost like she created this separate reality where she could be the good Mrs. Cross,
Right?
while the monstrous Theresa Noah is locked away somewhere deep inside.
Yeah.
But the reality is those two sides coexisted,
Yeah.
which is a terrifying thought.
It's a reminder that human beings are complex,
Right.
capable of both profound love and unimaginable cruelty.
Right.
And sometimes those impulses reside within the same individual,
Yeah.
creating a chilling dissonance that's hard to comprehend.
So in the end, Theresa Noah, the woman who meticulously crafted this persona of kindness, is exposed as a cold-blooded killer.
Right.
The mask slips, and the world sees her for what she truly is. It's a stark reminder that evil doesn't always wear a sinister grin.
Right.
Sometimes it wears the face of normalcy.
Yeah.
Of Mrs. Cross bringing cookies to a bake sale.
Right.
And as I'm reading through these accounts,
Yeah.
I can't shake this feeling that so much of this tragedy could have been prevented
Right.
if only someone had believed Teresa's children when they first reported the abuse.
Yeah.
If only the authorities had intervened sooner.
It's a question that haunts many cases of abuse.
Yeah.
We see missed opportunity,
Right.
systemic failures,
Yeah.
a collective blindness to the suffering happening right in front of us.
Okay.
It highlights the need for greater awareness, for mandatory reporting laws,
Right.
for a society that prioritizes the safety and well-being of children above all else.
It's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to be vigilant, to
Right.
speak up when we suspect something is wrong.
Absolutely.
Silence in these situations can be deadly.
We need to foster a culture where victims feel empowered to come forward,
Yeah.
where their voices are heard and believed.
Right.
And we need to hold those in positions of authority accountable
Right.
for recognizing and responding to signs of abuse.
What strikes me, too, is the incredible strength and resilience of Teresa's surviving children.
Yes.
They endured years of unimaginable trauma,
Right.
but they found the courage to come forward,
yeah.
to seek justice,
Right.
and ultimately to rebuild their lives.
Their stories are a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome even the most profound adversity.
Is.
They faced their abuser,
Yeah.
exposed her crimes,
Yeah.
and refused to let their past define them.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that hope and healing are possible,
Right.
even in the face of unimaginable pain.
It's inspiring, really.
Yeah.
And while nothing can truly erase the horrors they experienced,
Right.
there's a sense of closure in knowing that Susan and Sheila were finally laid to rest in marked graves,
Yes.
their names etched in stone.
Right.
A message of peace accompanying their final resting place.
It's a small but significant act of remembrance,
Yeah.
a way to honor their lives
Yeah.
and acknowledge their tragic deaths.
Right.
Their stories, while deeply disturbing,
Yeah.
serve as a cautionary tale,
Right.
a reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked abuse
Right.
and the importance of protecting the most vulnerable among us.
It's a story that stays with you,
Yeah.
that forces you to confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature.
Right.
But within that darkness,
Yeah.
there's also a glimmer of hope.
Ah.
The courage of the survivors,
Right.
the dedication of those who sought justice,
Right.
and the potential for learning from these tragedies to prevent them from happening again.
Right.
And for you, listener, I hope this deep dive has provided some insights,
Yeah.
some answers,
Yeah.
some sense of understanding amidst the darkness.
Yeah.
It's a complex case,
It is.
one that defies easy answers.
Right.
But by engaging with these sources,
Yeah.
by confronting these uncomfortable truths, we can all contribute to a world where such horrors are never repeated.